Hi, I'm Felix, and I recycle chopsticks for a living. I imagine a world without waste, where we're redefining the term waste to resources. I grew up surrounded by wood as a natural material, so that became my passion. But over the last decade or so, bamboo really became my expertise. And I thought, how can I create a tangible, relatable story where we can show how a viable circular economy works? And that's why I created ChopValue. And as CEO and founder, I use ChopValue as a way to lead by example, to really, truly create a circular economy as the new norm, one chopstick at a time. So what is a circular economy? And to be honest, when I started ChopValue as a business, I actually also did not understand that terminology. So in simple terms, we are used to taking an item and we're using it once and then we're disposing it. So that's the standard way of doing everything around us. That's called linear economy. In a linear way, we're using one material, turn it into a product, and at the end of its lifetime, we're disposing it. That's linear. A circular economy is the practice of trying to loop that resource as often as we possibly can, either into the same product or into a new product over and over again, so that we're reducing the stress on all the resources that we're actually taking from our environment. And that applies to almost every material in the world. So a circular economy is one of the most efficient ways to practice sustainability. And that's what we have to work towards too. So whenever we talk about circular economy or waste, we often get confused that we only talk about plastics. I think it's just because it's at the forefront of our minds. But there are many, many other waste streams that are huge contributors to our landfills and huge contributors to our annual emissions, the carbon emissions that generate greenhouse gases. So my background, because of my wood background as a wood engineer, is all the waste that we actually generate in the construction industry, starting with cement, wood, steel, and all other materials that are really, really hard to recycle or convert into new products. So we have non-organic waste and organic waste, and it's equally as important to actually look at all that organic waste and to make sure that we loop that back into new products and not be okay by its one-time use in a linear economy. That's what we do. That's why we're looking at using wood more efficiently, and that's why we're using bamboo more efficiently. And that's one of the big goals that we have with ChopValue, to really show how we can do it in the most efficient way locally, wherever we are in the world. So we're talking about closing the loop when we're working in a circular economy, and the different ways of doing it. One way is recycling, and I don't think it actually ends there. If you just separate materials, they still have to be converted into something new. And then there's upcycling. As an engineer, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the word upcycling, because it usually only looks into hands and crafts. But I think you can scale that thinking. The handcrafted concept of turning a material that we recycled into a production process that can be upcycled to something more valuable and new. So as an example, I'm not the first one who came up with the idea to recycle chopsticks into new products. Around 20-30 years ago, there was a case study in Japan that turned a single-use chopstick into paper. So if you're turning a 1-cent item, like a chopstick, into paper, another 1-cent item, there's almost no value creation. So it's really, really hard to afford the logistics and the value creation throughout this process. But if you're turning that 1-cent item chopstick into a new beautiful product that has much more value than the initial material that you collected, that's how you can actually afford. So you see this like hockey stick curve of growth. This is how you can afford that circular process within your brand, within your company. You can hire people, and that allows you to actually create this viable circular upcycling movement. And this is what I wanted to make sure I get across as a comparison of how we can close the loop, comparing recycling with upcycling. I hope ChopValue and the microfactory concept that we have built can really lead by example to create a viable circular economy. I'm not going to pretend that we are solving the world's problems by recycling chopsticks, but I think we can maybe inspire to look at ourselves and maybe help you to look at your local environment and your waste to resource streams that could potentially be turned into new products. And even if we are only doing this with 0.015% of the global waste problem, we have recycled over 90 million chopsticks to date and turned them into new products. And now that is actually starting to become a real measurable impact, with more than 60 microfactories around the world in development that are opening soon. And I think many others can look at us and see how can we use this concept to our benefit to actually create positive change in our environment. My career led me here to become the chopstick guy. And I think there are multiple other resource streams that you can tackle with your expertise a similar way as I did, turning a very low value, underutilized item and resource stream into something beautiful and premium that we can use over and over again to reduce the stress on our environment and our natural resources.